the show just like I'm so fine. Every day 나를 위로해 다 똑같은 사람이야 ain't so special. Hey man keep one two step 차분하게 모두 치료해보자고 나의 뼈.
Hello, happy Saturday. Good hello from New Jersey. Who's dialing in from where? Please let me know. Toronto, my besties. You know, isn't it cool that, well, some of you I got to meet in real life, so thank you. That's awesome. Some of you I have not, and some of you I will meet this year. Isn't it cool that we have like just the technology to keep in touch, that I even know what's going on in your lives because you tell me? I was just thinking that because we're going to talk about like fandoms and stuff, and that is just such a benefit. Hi, Zoe. I'm assuming it's warming up in Minneapolis because it's getting pretty hot. Hello, oh goodness, LA. I always think of you guys. It's kind of early, but thank you for starting your Saturday with me. So much going on. Like Jonathan's like, hi, everyone, question mark. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Saturday, first Saturday of June. June means a lot. June 2025 means a lot. It's all about BTS. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but here's how I'm like kind of doing healthy boundaries, right? I think I'm more online to keep in tabs of anything related to BTS. And we all know the dates of when they'll be released. I think people have known that, probably memorized it, but just all the hype surrounding it, being online when they come out. Now, when Jin came out and Hobie came out, I was in Korea. So that was cool because it was on the same time zone. This time around, I'm not, except for Suga. So that'll be cool. We'll be there. But next week's a big week. So if you're like me, you're like eagerly anticipating and you're online, but then I have to have some healthy boundaries, just saying, because then you go down all this, like who's doing that? And it can get a little overwhelming. So I'm just noticing we're all getting a little overwhelmed in a good way, but you can also get overwhelmed, even if it's good, a little too much, like too much stimulation. So I wanted to leave with that going, that's what's happening to me. Hello from Hawaii, Washington State. Love you guys. Ooh, 72 is really nice. It's like 90 degrees here. So I was just, for those joining, just talking about the excitement. This is the month, right? Everybody's eagerly anticipating since like 2023 or even 2022 that this came. But I was just saying it can get overwhelming when you're online. There's always some sort of update. So I share, but then I'm still like, you know how you go down this path of, and then what's going on? And then who's going to be there? And then what other news? And what's the next step? And I was going to talk about it later, but I'll just talk about it now. Weverse, I don't want to say dangerous. You go down Weverse, and I mean dangerous as in then there's so much content on Weverse. I knew that, but I only subscribed to 2, BTS and Kim Sunho. And then my staff told me about Park Bo-young, and I already knew 17, but I just didn't always have notifications. But once you turn on notifications, then, and I did because it's this month. So then I'm like, oh my gosh, there's hundreds of notifications. So I went on it, or I'm on it every day. And then I'm just saying, it's just me. I tend to get a little overwhelmed because I'm already online. And then I have to really keep those healthy boundaries of doing too much and being too much online. Does that make sense? So I always make sure when I go down Weverse going, and then someone told me today, oh, then there's this on Weverse. I go, oh my gosh, there is everything on there. And then now that I know some of my favorite actors and actresses also have Weverse, I just didn't know. I follow them on social media, but I didn't know they're also doing Weaver stuff. Then you go down even more. So I've added that platform to as like Netflix, Weavers, Vicky, Prime Video, Disney. I'm just telling you. And what else is there? Hulu. It's endless. Hello, my biggest fan from Utah. Hee. I love it. So that's the other updates. Okay, other updates are Magic Shop Tour. I think now every day we're doing something on that tour because it launches. Our first one launches June 24th. I literally land in Korea just a few days before. That's cutting it close for me, but I have to be in California to speak. So we worked it out that way, and then see some family and all that stuff. And then my son graduates just a few days before. So literally this coming week, it's going to be a little bit crazy for family, and then anticipating and being on Korea time already to plan for our coming tour. It's new, and unlike our other tours, well, I don't want to say unlike, but the Magic Shop Tour has a little bit elevated experiences, as in the focus is on a lot of the experiences, not just the sites. Some of the other tours are sites and being together and belongingness and all that and healing. But the Magic Shop, we have those experiences layered because we want to do it BTS did, right? And we also want to eat where they ate. So there's a lot of that. So it's all coordination. So it's fun. I mean, it's exciting going, oh my goodness, we're really doing this. So that's what's happening. I'm cracking up, Mandy. I know, but I have him on, and I think I started turning it on maybe like a month ago. So yeah, it is a little overwhelming when you wake up to, oh my gosh, and then like things are going crazy on it. So again, it's all about boundaries, and I don't go into it. Even if the notification comes, I'm like, I see it, and then go into it later. Does that make sense? So that's the biggest update, our Magic Shop Tour. And I mean, I don't know about you, but because they'll all be out in time for our Magic Shop Tour, I'm just saying that is very exciting. And then right after our Magic Shop Tour, we hit July, and we will announce our 2026 dates. For those of you who have asked about it, we also have a reunion tour scheduled, and it's going to be, oh my goodness, a really good year. I think I say that all the time, but 2026 will be very unique in the sense of seeing people back and formally doing a tour. I mean, that is so exciting, and I feel very blessed about that. So thank you. Hi, I see you from Toronto, Berta. So that's the biggest update, our upcoming tours. I would say early July is when we will announce our 2026 dates. We already have them, but it's all about scheduling announcements and not overwhelming the team on the back end. You know, I thought I had another announcement. Okay, you already know about my daughter, my son's graduate. There's just a lot. This is probably the most family stuff ever. And then I have our son, our third child in New York City, who basically finished his third year, his junior year, that's what I say, third year in California, and headed to New York City for his business internship. So really good stuff. But again, he's in New York. So I'm like, okay, New York, here, South Carolina, DC, it's crazy. So keeping track of all them, and then all the family events. I always say this is a blessing, but that doesn't mean it doesn't get stressful, right? To make sure. And then we're heading to Korea. So then we have to manage all that. So family is always at the forefront, even with everything we're doing. So before we leave, we have a lot to get done. So excited. Okay. So today will be about one deep dive. It will be our Unwritten Soul, which is not done yet. Historically, I don't do a full deep dive, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit of what I shared on social media to go into depth. And then I'm going to go into all your topics and questions. I was going to talk about other stuff, and then I saw all your questions, and I thought, you know what, this is actually good stuff. I'm going to talk about that. So Our Unwritten Soul on Netflix, currently airing. It airs today and tomorrow. I think why I like it from the get-go, I saw a lot of that inner struggle within the narrative of identity. When someone asks me things like, how do you decide on a K-drama for mental health? First of all, a general answer would be anything you watch, and I just use K-dramas, can be related to mental health, because mental health is an everyday thing, right? Our emotions, our social relationships, our family relationships, work relationships, and then psychologically, our brain is always at the forefront of anything with emotions and behaviors and thinking. It's there. So I could argue that saying everything you watch basically can impact you, right? But then I have some of my own criteria, which I'll talk about in a second. But Our Unwritten Soul immediately grabbed me from the monologue, because she was talking about herself and her twin and her perspective from her identity. So your identity like who you are, it's common sense, but not everybody thinks that way. Who you are and how you think about your values, like how people value you, how you relate to yourself with others and their values. Don't forget your friends and family have different values. Sometimes you guys completely don't align on the same values. I'm thinking politics as an example, but that's okay. Can be friends with you. You can still have family members, but there might be tension, right? So all of that, your schema in our psychology field, we say our world schema. So how we see the world directly impacts our well-being. And our unwritten soul, Pak Bo Young, kind of indicated that in her narrative, in how she even saw how they were raised and how their childhood unfolded. She even shared her perspective of how she saw her father versus her mother and her grandmother. So early on, the grandmother was a very important figure. If you haven't watched it, the father is not in the family anymore, and you can watch why. Not necessarily bad, but more tragic circumstances. But the grandmother was a very important figure from the get-go about the twins. And so I brought up a scene yesterday because someone brought up the question. And sometimes if I see a question, I'll immediately try to film something because it was on top of mind. And I love that somebody said, is it just enough to survive? Or can we just survive? Is that enough? And I answered it the best I could with time limits on social media. But yes, it is enough. And in fact, that is actually our go-to when we're in a time of crisis. I know tons of people when, including myself, when you're in a time of crisis, so it could be a life transition, it could be tragedy, grief, it could be literally a natural disaster, it could be in the midst of COVID, which I also put in the same breath of natural disaster in the sense of that was a pandemic. It hit the entire world. How we dealt with it was very different, but it was a big, big like world event for 3 years. So that, and then how we, even in the midst of something just horrific. So I don't want to go into details, but anything that is your only go-to is actually survival. So there are people who just go, I just got through it. And I even ask questions like, oh my goodness, when they come to see me, you got through that? That is actually, I literally say things like that going, wait a second, that is crazy. Oh my goodness, how did you get through that, right? And we're breaking that down. And perhaps sometimes I'm the first person they've shared some event with. And even in a workshop, I'll see people say something like, I've never shared this with my colleagues. It happens because I tend to talk things therapeutically, right? But I'm sharing that's the survival mode you're in. That is actually our go-to in that time of crisis. That's actually all you can do. So sometimes in some sense, you're numb, you're going through it. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm hit with another crisis. And you're just like, let me get through this. And I feel like that is actually okay. It's actually protective because I don't want you to crumble. What happens later, though, is very important. So in that scene, if you haven't watched it, I do like the show. It's not heavy. I wouldn't say it's heavy. I would say When Life Gives You Tangerines was heavier, but there's depth to it. You'll see a lot of social issues, but two twins, the same actress playing the two twins. The main twin, I would say, is Miji. So the one that we're really seeing the story break down at this point in the show. I didn't realize this, and you see her story. She went through a time of personal crisis from her own narrative of a dream she had that might have been not there anymore, and then how does she navigate that? And she was very young. So this is like early college. And I want to say her response to that is what her response is. Someone asked me once, I forget, it was like a session or a workshop earlier today, can you go to that extreme that Miji went through? Park Bo-young went to an extreme where almost it was like agoraphobic. So that term is where you can't leave the house. You literally are stuck in your bed or your room, and that's just the heightened anxiety of where you're at. I said, it certainly can happen. I know people, you will probably know people today who are famous today that will share stories that they can one day leave their house. So that is a go-to, a survival, like, I can't see anybody. I'm just going to stay here. That's where she was. You first see her mom's response. And I want to say, people might say, oh my gosh, it was a terrible response. Her mom's response was what a Korean mom would do, harsh, get out. And it seemed like when she's saying it, I could see from people going, oh my gosh, it's so self-centered. That's terrible. But as a mom who's actually very stressed out, going, get out of bed, you need to live. So I could see that harshness. But the grandmother, which grandmothers can do, came in from that different angle of already know her, and that gave that validation. So I refrain from saying the mom didn't handle it. The mom didn't validate. The reason why I say that, because you'll have people like that in your life who'll be like, you need to move on, or okay, you've been grieving enough already. You've heard that. Very callous and cold. But you have to see both examples to us to figure out like what life looks like. Does that make sense? So I thought the mom, I was like this, but I went, it's a mom who's like, get out. Like, I need you to live, right? And she was hitting her. And so that is the Korean way. It's a little dramatized. I don't really see that as much anymore. And then the grandmother came in and validated her. She didn't say it's okay that she kind of said, it's okay what you're doing. But you see the next step and what we would have imagined. And I'm not going to give spoilers. There's some situation with the grandmother currently in the drama, but the very next moment, which I couldn't clip and show you, was her character, Miji, literally seeing a little bit of a strength to acknowledge that she was in a not so good place and she just had to survive, and that was okay. But then when you validate that, is what we saw what happened next. That's why I pointed out what happened next, is when she got the strength to get out of bed. She still stayed in the home, is what we alluded to. And that's slow and sure progress. So I think I see a lot of people saying, I wish, why can't this just happen? I go, this can happen, but you like skipped 5 steps. So that's why I actually say, and we actually say this in our field, one small step can lead to one huge step. You just don't see that huge step. So you're trying to get to that huge step. So Miji in that position was trying to maybe go back into the world, not become an athlete, because that was her dream. And it wasn't that. It was just like live functionally would have been a goal. But to live functionally would be one step, get out of bed. And so you saw her crocheting. And so I also brought that up. That I thought is so cool that they brought up crocheting. And that's why I asked that question, because I've always actually thought I would love to learn to knit and crochet. And then someone told me, here's a label. They're like, Jeannie, yeah, you're not good with crafts. I was like, true. But it kind of discouraged me going, maybe I won't, because I am not good at that. But I've always been fascinated with that, thinking I would love to see some sort of, what's that word, progress as you're doing something. And I could see myself messing up. But I thought she was showing Chin Young, gosh, we know Chin Young, but I forget his character's name, what to do, and it helped him. And then you saw him make all this stuff. I get those Korean scrubbies all the time. I think I shouldn't say hundreds, because I give them away. I have them from family members that give them to me. I have friends that give them to the Korean scrubbies. They're very Korean looking with the special like sparkly knits. You know what I'm talking about? They're all over in Korean homes. I have that in Korea too, because they're given to me by gifts. I think I'm just laughing because I'm thinking, wow, it's their hobby, but maybe they also found it therapeutic, because that was a reminder in that show. She was teaching that. I don't think I've seen that before. So that's another mindfulness technique that you guys already do. I saw a lot of you do that already. But you know how you can't watch a K-drama sometimes doing that because you miss the subtitles. So I want to share about that scene. That survival is enough. In fact, that is our coping in a time of extreme crisis to whatever's crisis for you. And then when you come out of that is what's critical. So when people come out of that is when they could crash. Meaning, I just came out of that and wait a second. I think I have post-traumatic stress. I'm grieved. Oh my goodness, I'm living with this person. I can't do it. That critical moment in trauma code, they called it the golden hour of saving somebody's life. That's also very similar in mental health. There's a golden, not just 1 hour, golden time period where you have to be proactive in taking care of yourself once you get out of that survival mode. In fact, some people, actually, I don't know anybody who really comes to me in survival mode. I'm trying to think. Most of the time it's right after that, when they're not doing well and they realize, oh, this is what happened. Few times it's in the midst of that, but generally it's right after. So I'm sharing that because that moment where her granddaughter felt like her grandmother understood, which seemed to be their relationship, she got out of bed and that's all she needed to do. So I wanted to really emphasize that. I wonder if she crocheted the Afghan that she hid under. Maybe. I remember that. Yeah, it was very colorful. Wait, but she was already hiding under that before she started crocheting, right? I'm thinking you're meaning that one. But yay, I'm glad you're here. Oh, okay. I'm not watching Divorce Insurance, so thank you. So that's another recent drama, right? So maybe it's the latest thing, but it brought out a lot for me to also share with you. And of course, it's across here, and I can't find it. If you guys have ever are into drawing, there's like mandalas where you draw these patterns. I used to do that a lot when I worked with teenagers early on in my clinical career. I don't do that as much because I don't really work with teenagers as much, but it's very therapeutic. So it brought out that going, even drawing is fun. And we see that a lot of drawings, right? People drawing and doing art. So just that was just a reminder for me, even as a therapist, of using a clip like that to go, hey, she's telling him what it does, kind of in some sense puts you in a control of those thoughts of that might be negative, positive, nothing. You know how you have all these ruminating thoughts? It might help just to go, I'm not having some thoughts. I'm just absorbed in this mindful activity. So that's a reminder there. But I wanted to really emphasize there might be people criticizing you in the time of survival, going, hey, snap out of this. You need to do this. Then in that moment, just know, even if they don't understand, because remember, people around you are what you have to deal with at times. As long as you understand that this is enough that you're surviving, and perhaps find that one person, whether it's family or friend or colleague, that understands and validates that you're in this time of survival. So we've all been through that. I say no one is immune to just living in survival. There are some people have said to me they've been in survival for 4 or 5 years as they're caretaking. I believe it. But then I guess my encouragement to that was, okay, but that will actually be that's a little prolonged. So how do you be in survival, but at the same time, you're trying to, in a hopeful sense, move towards taking care of that survival to not just survive and miss life in front of you, even if you're caretaking, because that's very important. And so caretaking is a big part of all this too, right? And then, so I'm going to say this, then you see her later taking care of her grandmother. Everything kind of made sense in episode 4, for me particularly. I don't know for you, but I really love this drama, and I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen, particularly with the twins. So you see Miji more, but Mire, which means future, so I had to remember that. Mire, her other twin, is also discovered things about herself. And in some sense, I actually see Mire, the other twin, being very good with saying things directly that we didn't necessarily see. Does that make sense? So don't think that you're just one way. People might say, "Oh, you're too shy to be confrontational, or you're too outgoing, so this is how you'd be." I'm like, you'd be surprised. Generally, I, as somebody who's extroverted, errs on the side of caution before I saying something, where I know some introverts who are very good at being very firm and saying, no, this is not okay. And I'm like, wow, that's super cool. So there's no one way. It's just making sure that you know how you want to handle something. That's what I'm learning from this. So again, I highly recommend it. That was my mini deep dive. And I don't normally do that, but there's a lot to learn with the intersectionality of, again, mental health and your identity narrative. Okay, let's move on to your questions. And then you have questions here you can ask me. Okay, what's your, good one. What's your mental health criteria for a K-drama to be recommended? I had to think long and hard about this. So I guess one of the criteria, and they're not in any particular order, is number one, if I like it. Like, I won't recommend something I don't like. Does that make sense? No, even if you tell me your genre is a thriller, I'll go, oh, that's not quite my favorite genre. I've been very honest about that. That's just me, because you're asking me for recommendations without me being know-it-all-y. I'm not trying to do that. I just will tell you that's not my favorite genre. So I really don't know. That's one. So I have to like it. 2, the other thing is I immediately get a sense that it shows critical thinking, because we should be thinking, and even a little bit of triggering, like, oh, that's kind of sad, or oh, that really made me angry. But overall, you're left with a positive takeaway, as in, I still want to see more of that. Let me give you an example. When Life Gives You Tangerines was very hard for some. In fact, I know some people who have really had a hard time watching it, but they watch all the way through and they rave about it. Why? Because there still was an overall sense of not just positivity, hope. I guess that's the best word. Hope for healing in a drama like that. And so you got to have some of that for me to recommend it, meaning I see hope in it and the message is strong, even if it's hard, like a toxic parent, which we'll get to, or even toxic family, all of that we see in dramas. The overall still takeaway is like, oh, I've taken this way from my life where I need to change. my family situation, or I realize I'm in a toxic relationship. That is what I look for from my own perspective as a therapist. So so the second criteria would be like from a therapist going, I think this would be something good to recommend because clients can learn from it. 3 is actually my response from you guys, from clients, and in workshops. So based on the feedback I get, I'll give you an example. I showed one clip from Squid Game. I still always preface and I make people laugh going, yeah, so I don't always recommend Squid Game. In fact, I'll never recommend Squid Game for your mental health, but I'll go, it's a entertaining show. But I preface that saying, then I had to watch something like heartwarming to like get over the, the craziness of that show. But I have shown clips, but I started showing that same clip because of the message I was giving in Squid Game. And that has now become a staple. The clip I showed tends to show the difficulty of saving face and showing face of a mistake you made that led to a failure. Does that make sense? A failure in that person's eyes. I should rephrase that. A failure in that person's eyes and maybe society's eyes. But I showed that example. So that was based on feedback and all the workshops and clients and people going, but I like Squid Game. But I'm like, okay, so you do like Squid Game. Let me think. Because I also want to reach people where they're at. So that's what I do. So that's 3. So hopefully I'm saying number 1, I got to like it. 2, therapist-wise, it's something I find that's helpful to the client. But I recommend my Mr. 80% of the time. About 50% of the time, people are like, Jeannie, it's too hard for me to watch. I accept that. I go, okay, then that's not the drama for you, right? So there are times I recommend, because I love that trauma. I'll still recommend it going, I need you to go get all the way to the end if you can. But several people have said, I can't get past episode 4, 6. I'm not going to make you watch something that is too hard for you. So that's another example, right? Based on my client workshop feedback, session feedback, I take very seriously, and I'm using my Nunchi looking at people, whether it's like one-on-one or in a bigger session, I'll look and observe going, they do like this clip. They're seeing it. Oh, this fell flat, right? So that's how I do that. I recommend a K-drama. And then other recommendations is I feel like literally there's so much to take away and there's depth and insight. So Heavenly Ever After, I recommended. I didn't really, like I said, I kind of breezed through episodes 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or not 7, 8, 9, and 10. I was like, what is going on? But the overall takeaway for me was a lot of learning and a lot of the emotional impact that it has that I recommend it for healing, because some people will get something completely out of it that I may not. Does that make sense? But I'm still talking personal, Jeannie perspective, and then Nuna's Nucci therapist perspective. I combine the two. And so I recommended recently when someone's like, I need some on grief, Heavenly Ever After. Even the trauma showed that one episode in 11. I've definitely bookmarked that for future references for clients. Other criteria for it to be recommended, if it's not too triggering. So Something in the Rain was triggering for some people, but we still finished it. It was also triggering for me. But you could be triggered because don't avoid something. First of all, even if you're triggered, I won't say, oh, then don't watch. I'll just say, does it continue to trigger? Like, do you get these visions or, flashbacks, or like you feel like it really bothers you to watch, then you judge and not watch. But Something in the Rain, people end up watching, first of all, chunking in too, right? And then Sonia Jin, but just generally speaking, the topic was something we could learn from and you were intrigued enough to keep watching. That's one that I might say, I always say, ooh, toxic portrayal of a mother that's kind of legit. I say kind of because not every family is like that. But I do say that is a good example of some family trauma there or generational trauma that you could look at. So I do recommend it. And that's a trauma topic, right? Then there's people who recommend comedy and light. But even if it's light, I would say overall Attorney Wu was light, but so much depth there, right? So it's very layered. And then I have some people who have actually literally, I can count on my fingers, not always, who didn't like any of my recommendations. They're like, okay, no, I can't watch this. Hometown Cha-Cha was boring. I'm like, what? I still go like this. Okay. And then literally they'll say something drastic to me that I never even saw. What was it? I can't think what it was. It was something I've never saw, maybe barely heard of. And they said, this is the one that changed my life. And I'm not going to be there judging. I just went, wow, I didn't know these. You went through all of these and you really took my, recommendations, but they didn't work for you. So that happens too. So everybody's unique and different, but that's generally my criteria. I do look at what clients say. It's not just me coming from you. In fact, when someone comes to me and says, Jeannie, oh, tomorrow I refused to watch Tomorrow when it first came out 2 years ago. I was like, I am not watching a show about suicide. Like I do that for a living. But guess what? Based on clients and also multiple DMs, and some of you even like friends saying, this was actually really good. I went, fine. I watched it. It's on my list. It made my book, as in that section where it was a great portrayal of many different stories of how you get to a hopeless place. And they were very realistic. So I really liked that drama. So that's an example. And so now I recommend that drama. And I always thank the community going, thanks to you guys talking about it. So I don't work in a silo. I don't work in a silo. So I really look at all these dimensions of responses. But again, I will kind of err on, did I like it? And did I think it's beneficial as a therapist? There are times people have said, why didn't you recommend Penthouse or something? I go, because I think it's horrible. I will say that. Nevertheless, I stopped at 7, and I know some people did like Nevertheless, but there was an example where I went, I couldn't stand it. I just didn't, even if I recommend some other toxic relationships to look at that you can learn from, something in that irked me. I didn't, as a family therapist, couples therapist, I can do it. So I didn't recommend that one. So there's that, so that's the only other one I can think of. Generally speaking, I'm very open. If you tell me to watch something, I have done it. I'd be like, okay, I'll start it. Like Alchemy of Souls. Okay, sorry, I can't finish that one. I keep saying that. I tried. I couldn't do it. Okay, so hopefully that helped you for me to recommend. And again, just because I'm a therapist doesn't mean it all works. I'm going to say that again. Whatever works for you and you enjoy is really important too. Okay, next one. Next question. Looking at time. Body image. This is not an odd topic. I saw this and went, not at all. I think it's a huge topic that's not necessarily portrayed in a K-drama. It's just implied, right? Even some people saying in K-dramas, oh, you look like this. Oh, you're not pretty. And I've seen it. I don't have examples on the top of my head, except this is at the forefront. The standards of beauty are very high in Korea. And do you know, now that I live there more, I see it more. And I don't want to say it's bad. I could spin it like it's bad, but this is how I see it. Koreans have high standards. They do. Hence, high standards in quality of production, K-dramas, high standards in academics, high standards in family, marriages, relationships. That is consistent. So the beauty is consistent. However, it can get unhealthy when that's the focus and then you become inauthentic, right? And so loved it. Alchemy of Souls, Korean hair pie. I know. Pause. I tried. I think I tried 3 times. Yeah, no. So I'm done. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm sure someday I'll come back and go, maybe I'll watch it and it'll hit me differently. But I tried. I really, really, really did. And I love, especially the actress in the first one, Chung So-min. So I just couldn't do it. So with the Korean beauty, everything you see in the K-dramas is pretty legitimate. Koreans are pretty blunt. Like they'll say things like, oh, yeah, your recent haircut, like, okay, my bangs are finally grown. They're like, yeah, your recent haircut, the bangs do look better on you because your forehead's big. No one said that. It's just that I'm just thinking. But you get things like that, And so that has a lot to do with body image and even the standards you see in Korean dramas. I had a new rookie person who I shouldn't say rookie because I don't like labels. Sorry, new K-drama watcher who came to me and was so funny on how he was saying these questions and asking this. And I go, I love hearing your perspective. You're asking very, very deep, insightful questions that I didn't really think about, but also going, yeah, and obviously they're beautifully perfect. I go, I haven't heard that in a long time. If you've been watching K-dramas for a long time, you don't mention it. You're used to the standards of beauty. But this particular person was like, so yeah, do they all look like that? I go, in all honesty, the actors look like that in real life. And in all honesty, so do people. Generally speaking, every time I'm like, okay, why do you have such good skin? Yeah, they really know how to take care of themselves. A lot has to do with early habits when you're young. They don't have sunblock there. They call it sunscreen. So it's very much part of your day-to-day, hat wearing. Masks were early on in the 80s. I saw that too. So all of that is protecting. So they're very, very health conscious in that sense. So I don't think it's an odd topic. There is an impact. And I do have middle school kids who have told me they felt badly about themselves seeing some of the images on K-dramas. And I feel in that sense, the only thing I could say is that can't be helped. Like I can't say you need to have a better body image. I don't say that. I just said, then I don't think that might be good for you to watch, because obviously some of it's unrealistic, right? Not everybody can have that perfect scenario and look that perfect and have perfect hair. I do look at hair. I'm like, wow, their hair is so perfect. Pause. A question about trigger content warnings. Netflix has basic ones, but so much slips through. For example, I wanted something light, warm-hearted, starting because this is my love. There's an attempted suicide attempt is essay. Is that what you're saying? And because this is my first life. I love that one. Is that how it starts? It's been a while since I've seen it. That was an older one. Because this is my first life was like 2017, I want to say, if I recall. Maybe the trigger warnings are now much more, what's the word? Standardized and much more strict, just because this is the state of the world. So I see why maybe they overlooked that one. Not to excuse that, but yeah, there should be suicide, and you see it now. Netflix is good. I don't think Vicky has that. Netflix has to. It's such a global platform. But if it does trigger, okay, it can trigger you, but you're okay watching. If it triggers you and it kind of hinders you and you think about it all the time, then I do say you have to stop. Going back to beauty, so I hope that helps. Oh, sexual assault. Thank you. Hello. Really? I can't remember. Okay, let me look at that again. Obviously, I took away because this is my first life. So much of the other stuff, but I don't remember that. I do remember one of the leads, the really strong one I like, who kind of faced things in a workplace. I wonder if it's that, but I'll look at it again and get back to you. Thank you for bringing that up. Body image, importing K standards of beauty, but it also exists in Hollywood. So it exists everywhere, actually, and so that's something I don't think necessarily we could tell Hollywood and K-dramas change, but just how we absorb it is very important. And I do think I don't mention it as much because I feel like it's there constantly. But yeah, there are times I've even seen, oh my gosh, how do people get skin like this? But then you do see them in real life, and I want to say it's pretty much true. In real life, they do the same that they show in the K-dramas. If you see these actors in real life, you're like, oh my gosh. Obviously, they have the monetary funds to upkeep, but it's a very high standard. So is academics, so is family. And so I think I kind of put it in that bracket, not to downplay that, but Koreans just do it the very ultimate, from schooling and teaching their kids early on, even how to look good, how to dress. You see that. It sounds stressful, but when you grow up with it, it's not that stressful, right? It only gets stressful for me, yes, when I see my relatives and they stare at me critically like this, right? And I think one of them like, you look extremely tired. You need to go and rest. And actually, maybe I was tired, but I wasn't extremely tired. Like I needed to rest. So that comes out too. If they see that you're tired, I'm like, we all are tired. That's the first thing that they say. Another thing I want to share about that is also, just like you don't say I love you in Korea, or in Korean culture, you give fruit, feed them. Similar. Like, oh, you look so tired. Yeah, you need to go get a facial. Depending on who says it, I've seen that as more like, I'm really stressed out about you. You look really worried, but this is all I can offer. Go get a facial. It's a very Korean thing. And so even like, wow, your hair is thinning. I heard that too. Not for me, somebody else. And they're like, well, I just had a baby. Oh yeah. So in the interpretation, what I thought was her hair is thinning. She had a baby, which is normal physically, but this person was stressed going, I could tell you're stressed out from the baby. Does that make sense? So another way of showing love. Her boss crush tries. Okay. Yeah. I do remember that. Okay. I do remember that. Yeah. Okay. I'll look into that further. Thank you for sharing that though. Again, I think it has to do with the time frame. It was a 2017 drama. So I think even back then, that's also already 8 years ago. Probably didn't have those strict relations. Okay. Go to the next one. Looking at time. Do K-dramas accurately depict the Korean culture, specifically boy-girl relationships? Yes, I think so. They do. And the familial conflict slash lovingness slash yelling slash expectations, I do think it's pretty accurate. What may not be accurate is like the over dramatization when people ask about the slapping. I don't remember the last time I saw that. Like it's definitely not in my family. And so I don't think it's in my friend's family either. That might have been back in a day. I think I've shared this before. You see friends hitting each other. Like it's such a Korean thing. I'll see it. Friends clapping hands, friends like slapping the table. They're very passionate. Koreans are very passionate despite like some restraint. They show a lot of emotion, what you see in the K-dramas. So yes, that is my my response to that. The boy-girl relationships, yeah. So I have some Korean nationals who say things like, "Oh my gosh, it's so fantasy, the Korean boys." But then sometimes I say, "Is it fantasy because currently you're not in a relationship?" I'm not trying to make them feel bad. I just challenge that because when I'm walking around Korea, I kid you not, people will say, "Okay, Seoul is like you got to be a couple." It's a kind of a joke, as in they feel very single in Korea. Couples are all over the place. They will dress. I think I've shared this before, and I feel bad taking pictures, so I don't do it. Two twinsies, like I'm talking to the extreme. Men also wearing pink cashmere sweaters, like their girlfriend or partner or wife, and so a lot of that is accurate. And yes, men wearing the headbands at Lotte World. Yes, all of that. Yes, yes, yes. You see all of it. Taking pictures with the tripods. I see that in the US too, but not to the extreme of Korea, where they set up a whole photo shoot. And my tour people will say they've seen it, right? Tell me you've seen it. You see it when we're at a touristy spot and you see them taking pictures. All that is accurate. The outpouring of affection and all that, I want to say it's action, but every family is different. So some families don't show it as much, but there is the depth of closeness for sure. And so I'm spinning that positively. On the non-positive end, yeah, all the conflict, expectations that parents put on their kids, also quite accurate. Vietnamese American Susan Liu memoir, The Manucurist's Daughter, discusses toxic beauty standards in depth. Excellent book. Thank you for sharing that. And there's actually even one, I think by a Chinese Korean who also shares, or Korean Chinese who also shares the beauty standards. I forget. It's also really popular on that. And yeah, so thanks for sharing the book. Totally exists. Okay, hopefully that answers your question, because there's some other question on toxic family I want to answer. Is Korean culture that G-rated? No kissing till episode 8. First of all, no culture's G-rated. And I would say K-dramas are more PG. Maybe some are G. But why do they keep it like that? Because I do believe overall Korean is a conservative culture. So that relates to the culture. Generally speaking, you might see affection, but you don't see massive PDA. And actually, it's similar to the US. You don't always see that. And so that doesn't mean it doesn't exist behind closed doors, but how they want to present it is what I think is accurate. Meaning, right? And also part of the whole appeal of K-dramas is they keep it that way. The G to PG rated. I don't know anybody who, yes, it's fun to get some raciness. And then we're like, oh my gosh, they actually kissed in episode 1, right? Well, we'll get little like that because we're so used to Western media doing that, but that's part of the appeal of Korean dramas. But yeah, just generally speaking, it's a conservative culture, and that's rooted in Confucian and all that, and the family, family values. So that has still consistently been shown in media like that. Now, Korean movies are very different. So Korean movies show very differently things. And I almost forgot this. Korean dramas are on network television. So they have specific limits to what they show. They can't show nudity. It's like TV here in the US. You have to show, especially on cable TV, very, very, very specific standards. So don't forget, the shows you're watching are still coming out on Korean local television. So that's another reason, and probably a big reason. The dressing alike makes me laugh. I will go out of my way to change my husband coming out looking like me when we are headed out. That's 34 years of marriage for you. I'm noticing it too. We'll match, and people will notice we're matching, and we don't plan it. But I think it's fun, but we don't purposely match, And so, but it is really cute. And it's cute to see even couples with their kids, parents with their kids all match. I think we do that in the US too. So I think some of that's very similar and not so different, but a whole nother level, where the men are okay holding purses, wearing the animal headbands, seen it all, pink cashmere. I love the pink cashmere sweater when you drape it over your shoulder. Yeah, that's classic. I just love that. We see that all the time. So I hopefully answered this question. Yes. Next one. Oh, dark side of the K-drama industry. I think there's a dark side of the K-pop industry more. I was just going to say that. From what I've heard, from what I've seen, from people telling me, and just, people in the industry, K-pop has, yes, indeed, I think we all know, the dark side of the K-drama industry would be the standards. Perhaps when people are becoming actors or trying to get that role, they're told to look a certain way. I would say that's still dark side, because you're told the way you look isn't good enough. I know some actors have also put their foot down because they're big enough to say, I'm not going to do this. That's true too. But there's a dark side to any entertainment industry. There's a dark side to academics, and so can you address when the certain shows are banned? Can you give me an example? Certain shows are banned that are showing in Korea. Oh, when they're banned on local television? Yeah, because they probably, according to their network standards, they can't show it, right? And so that would be one of them. I think some are banned around other countries, but let me know what you mean. I was surprised the trunk was so racy in scenes. I think we all were surprised, right? But that was that drama. Oh, by the way, the dramas that drop all episodes, like for instance, I just watched 9 Puzzles. I do want to talk about that, but I can't because then I'm going to spoil the ending and I don't want to do that to you. But I'm iffy on the ending, meaning it wasn't my favorite just for certain reasons. Anyways, but it was good. Good ending, but just the way I'm not making sense. It's a good show. But 9 Puzzles, like Mercy for None, The Glory, all those dropped because they're exclusively for that platform, like Disney or Netflix. But the ones that go once a week, twice a week, 2 times a week, like Our Unwritten Soul, they're playing on network television. Does that make sense? So you will show them having no nudity and being G or PG rated. So that's my best way to answer that. I'm not in the depths of the K-drama darkness, but I just think any entertainment can be dark and there's shady people everywhere. But I think the K-pop industry is worse. I think only because maybe there's so much more groups and all that, and K-pop went global, and even though K-dramas are global, I think it's very different. But yeah, there's always a dark side to that. I went to Tribeca Film Festival last night to see the Rose documentary, and they highlighted the serious mental health challenges of one of the members. And you know what? People ask me this. I'm going to bring this up. Someone asked me, are there more mental health challenges in Korea today? And that's why we're seeing people talk about it. I think it's both. More mental health challenges, but at the same time, people are talking about it. So they always existed. It's just that now the stigma, people are trying to break through that stigma, which is just coming in Korea, where I always credit the US saying US is more advanced in that way because the field of psychology kind of rooted there. So they're much more talkative and even verbose on what's need to be done when it comes to mental health challenges. Korea's just getting there. So I tell people it's always existed. In the 90s, I saw some things in Korea, right? But people are just able to talk about it and not get canceled. That's a whole nother topic. But dark side. Oh, another dark side. Yeah, talking about cancellation. High standards. I always have a difficulty with this topic because Korea has their own laws. And so when people say globally, hey, like, why does Korea do this differently? My only response is, well, I think that's their law, right? So there's US law, and then there's like, in Europe, whatever country, in Italy, Germany, you have your own law. So based on law, that is what they base it on. Does that make sense? So that's my answer to sometimes when things happen and they question that. The US law is not the same as South Korea law. So that would be some of that. And then the dark side would be, the amount of pressure these artists have. That is all true. They have so much pressure. And I think there's a question coming on the fandom that I was going to give a call to action, but we as fans can add to that pressure. Like, I've seen it. And I've even seen producers, have them tell me the pressure in the midst of filming a K-drama based on public response, what it can do. So there's pressure everywhere. Korea, they put a lot of emphasis on the public response. It's a very collectivist society, right? And so they do care a lot about that. And plus, it's all about the rating. So, and that can get dark. Some are the subjects, some too sexual. Snowdrop, Trunk, worry about the level of expectation from fans for the idols. I wish they could just live their lives. I'll talk about that because someone brought that up. Okay, next question. Every good story needs a good antagonist, but K-drama seems to specialize in horrible parents. Actually, my husband said this too, and he really dislikes it lately. Like, him more than me. I guess I think it's storytelling, but he's like, why does it have to have one horrible mom or horrible dad or single mom, single dad? Yeah, and I think that's the storytelling and the trope. Not to excuse that, because I know Chaebol families or other families, and it's traditional, conventional, good family, I would say. They might, behind closed doors, everybody has family conflict, but they're not all horrible. So my response to that is, my interpretation is, whoever's writing it, that's their perception. They think it makes for good storytelling, and you know it kind of does when you see a horrible mom or horrible dad, and then it just, that's part of the story. So that's part of it. The other part is, some do exist, yes, parents, but not all Chaebol's families. I was going to say there's quite a few, and don't forget, everything you read in the media, even if it's legitimate facts, everything is all implied. We don't know inside of a family till you get in. This is coming from a family therapist that I'll hear from my identified client. It could be the adult daughter, adult son, or parent. And they're my identified client, meaning the main person. And then I say, well, I'm a family. I go, oh, well, you keep talking about the same family member, so we're going to bring them in when you're ready. Sometimes they refuse, but that is always the goal. I go, you can't move forward if you have the conflict with this person. We need to have it in session. I'm the neutral party, even though they're my client. And I will be always still surprised, going, huh, that's not what your daughter said. Like, I literally will say that in session, and I'll look at the client going, so that's interesting. Did you know that? And they're like, kinda. But so I'm sharing this to say, what we see is not always what you get. Some is what you get. Does that make sense? So you kind of just have to give benefit of the doubt of family. But no, not all parents are terrible or horrible. In fact, I tend to see more of the opposite, because Koreans are so conservative with family and trying to preserve that familyness, that what they show is this. But yes, behind closed doors. But I've spent enough time with family that I just see such dedication from the parents on education, that I just say something like, wow, you're such a good parent, dedicating all that and working 100,000 hours a week. And sometimes I'll just say, I understand it's for your kid, but you also have to live. So that's what I tend to see, but not them terrible to their kid. Hope I'm making sense. Okay, I'm going to answer that, Mandy, when I get to the next thing about fandoms. I think that's coming up. Fandoms? Oh, just hoping more people will realize the healing impact of K-dramas, especially younger generation. Yes, they do. Okay, so in the MZ population, millennial, Gen Z, that is what Koreans refer them to. In my own opinion and my own research, and I ask everywhere I go, to the hairdresser, to whatever, what they're watching, the response from the younger generation is actually, to me, more positive, meaning they actually internalize what they're watching and go, yeah, I really got to talk about what I saw in this drama, like The Glory or Daily Dose of Sunshine. And they're the ones that actually share the impact more, whether it's something triggering to them, to healing, to wanting to talk more about it with their parents. The older generation, my parents, even people my age in their 50s, I have a harder time with talking with them. They're like, all K-dramas are the same. It's this. I'm like, no, they're not. So again, that would be the generational approach to mental health across all, well, okay, let me just talk US and Korea. Across both these countries, there's generational differences. So how a baby boomer and Gen X, millennial, Gen Z talk about mental health, all different. I always encourage, hey, you're part of the same family or system. You baby boomers need to learn what Gen Zs are saying and listen to them. Gen Zs, I need you to kind of understand that these baby boomers, or boomers that you call, have some wisdom behind them, and they just want to share their wisdom, and that's just because they've been there and done that, even if they sound condescending. I do say that, right? I've seen people think I'm younger, so they talk down to me all the time. But my point is, I wanted to say they do realize the impact. It's the younger generation now writing these webtoons. The webtoons that you see that are K-dramas, like Itaewon Class, True Beauty, I can name all of them. So many are written by younger folks in the MZ population. And so they are clearly seeing the healing impact. They're the ones pushing the needle, not the older generation. So in fact, a lot of the young journalists today that you see covering the K-pop, K-drama stories are in that younger generation. And their biggest, I guess, heartache is they can't get their editors to want to cover some of these stories, because they're like, the editor's like, yeah, so 17's going to the military. Like, I heard this recently. Okay. They're like, yeah, so I want to cover that. They're like, really? Do you know what I mean? So they're like, the person was like, every male goes to the military. They're like, but we're talking 17. So I actually see these younger Gen Zs, MZs, really, they're the ones creating social change. in Korea. That was my comment. Oh, every time I think I've watched the worst, another comes along. Right now, the mom in Tastefully Yours is horrendous. Yes, I hope so. She has some redemption at the end. Tastefully Yours. Oh yes, that Chaebol mom. Yeah, I think some of that exists as in, you're this, CEO mom that wants to look good, but I don't think they're all horrendous. Like, I really believe that that is more for drama's sake. That doesn't mean they don't have a horrendous side, but I don't see that generally speaking. Okay. I realize that sometimes it's weird caring and wanting a child to be better, and sometimes they come to resolve their issues. One thing we might see that we tend to see in these trouble dramas is the moms and dads changing. You do see that, right? So they'll write all this dramatic stuff for episode 1 to like 12. You dislike the parent completely until episode 13 or 14. You see a change, right? This is the K-drama trope. So I totally agree with that. I'm seeing more and more toxic, one-sided parenting that I'm like, why are we seeing this? So I don't know if it necessarily, I'm not going to say one way or the other, does this exist more in society? No, I just think maybe it's the current trope. That's my thinking. That's my expertise. So hopefully I answered this question with the younger generation. Yeah. They're the ones I talk to more about K-dramas. And the boomer taxi drivers. They're fun to talk to too. Yeah, about the dramas they're watching. How are they able to turn out so much content? Are night scenes like a must because there are no people around? Notice so much slow walking? Yes. Night scenes are a must. They film a lot overnight. We hear about this all the time. Some of them start their day at 1 a.m. So totally, they have to. They can't always close things off. If they were closing things off, I think all of us in South Korea would see a K-drama being filmed every day. But also at the same time, it's actually sad they are not churning out so much content. If you've been on my tours, you've heard from some producers that I invite to share about the industry that not only Hollywood, everybody's in a crisis with content because funding and budget cuts, all that stuff. So this year in South Korea, is the least amount of content they've churned out in like years. I think and it's so funny because I see it from a viewpoint of viewership going, oh my gosh, why are there so many May and June K-dramas? They are. But that's overall, if you're just looking at that one time period, that's this. But if you're looking at the year, they are churning out like a fraction of what they used to, like in 2022 even, because of what's happening in the industry. And it's not just Korea. It's also, I think Hollywood is actually worse from what I hear. So it's a tough time. So that's what I would say. Yeah, they film a lot at night. Actually, if you notice carefully, because I noticed this, because I kind of know, if you look at the actors you love, they look tired. And I'm saying this, and look at me sounding like a Korean mom. I'm like, oh my gosh, they look kind of tired. So they kind of filmed having just woken up at like 3 a.m. I'm just saying. Yeah. Okay, next question. Are grown-up children really so indebted even to toxic, abusive, I'm looking at time, toxic, abusive, or banning parents in real life like K-dramas? Yes. I don't want to say so indebted. It's the term I've shared before, filial piety, the duty to serve your parents and family, very much there. I experienced it when I first got engaged. And I'm not saying they were even toxic. It was just the expectation that you would pay us this. It's a little shocking when I was more raised in a Korean American household, but very normal today. It is. I don't know about abandoned parents, and that might be again for the sake of the drama that they're abandoned. But yeah, lots of parents can come back, and you even see this in the U.S. Parents coming back saying, "You owe me money," or "I'm your father or mother." You see this all the time. Yeah, but it's this in Korea. It is a value, a core value that you owe your parents. Now, I'll preface that with that's very traditional thinking. Some parents still think traditionally. I experienced that. Not with my parents, but so I'm kind of alluding in-laws, right? But the very traditional thinking, but I can't blame them. That's what they remember from 1970s. Now today in 2025, I see less of that kind of parenting. They're much more open to going, I want them to go to a good college, but if they want to learn art, I see that now in South Korea. We just see in the dramas a specific portrayal because that makes for a good drama. But generally speaking, parents push their kids, but they're still a little like, maybe I'm pushing too much. I'm seeing more of that. So that's good. And then I'm seeing less of they owe me. I got them through this. They owe me. You see that more in the older, like me as a child and my parents, that generation. So that may be what's trickling down that they still want to show, but that doesn't mean it doesn't still, I still see it. Like I know parents who, I mean, sorry, adult children give their parents money every month. You saw in dramas recently where, oh gosh, which one was it? Where the parent didn't use the money. Oh, Second Shot at Love was a classic example where when the daughter needed the money, I like that drama too, by the way. That daughter needed the money and the mother gave her the money saying, here's, you could start your life. And then the daughter was like, but I gave this to you every month from her, paycheck. The mom's like, we couldn't use it. We just saved it. So there's some of that going on. And I know that's accurate too, where they're like, you gave us all this money. We didn't tell you this, but we appreciated the gesture because that's the Korean thing to do. But we saved it all. And here it is for you to start your wedding or nest egg. Does that make sense? So I've seen that. So many look like they filmed the winter. You know what? I saw that too. The ones recently, like Tastefully Yours, everything we're watching right now clearly look like they filmed in the winter. But then you see lots like Love Scout and all those also filmed in the spring, but they're not. And then I heard Our Red Sleeve, or what was it? The Red Sleeve was filmed in the dead of summer, actually. Concrete Utopia, the movie, filmed in the dead of summer, and they were in winter clothes. So some of that could be also made up. But yeah, I see the breath too, but some of them are legit. You could tell they're really paying off. What about paying off parents' debts? Seen a lot of dramas. Yes, I've seen that too. Sometimes they do that for the sake of saving face. It's humiliating, and there's gossip, especially if you're in the limelight. Like if you're a celebrity, yes, you pay off your parents' debt. That does exist. In a Korean American or Korean Canadian or the Korean diaspora, I also believe that also exists, where people will pay off their family to help. And the gesture is not always one-sided. Like you're seeing the toxic parent going, you owe me money. In real life, it's more two-sided. An adult child feeling bad and going, let me do this for my parent. An adult child feeling bad that they have to do it and they're bitter about it and they do it. Or the opposite, a toxic parent saying, you owe me this, or a parent just being in a crisis and needing it. And so there's all those dimensions. I see all of it. You don't necessarily see that in a K-drama. So that is all part of filial piety, the duty to serve. You see less of parents, adult kids, this is my age and a little bit up, putting their kids, for instance, putting their parents in like nursing homes. I'm seeing it more and more actually in the Korean population, not because they don't want to take care of their parents, but they feel like they're unable to. And that's a legit call. If you're not able to take care of a parent that needs that 24-hour plus care because they have some condition, then you might have to make the best decision, right? But generally that is in the Korean culture to not do that. So you see a lot of generational living. You also see a lot of generational living to save money, because Seoul is particularly in Seoul because it's expensive. Hwarang was in the summer, yeah. It's expectation give money. No, it is an expectation. That's the short answer. Yes, it is an expectation. In fact, even weddings today, you have to ask if you can take some of that wedding money for yourself because it's given to the parents. That's recent weddings. Yep. Okay. Let's move on. I really enjoy the values and dynamics of the characters' family choice. Would you say it reflects Korean society? I think I kind of, not family of choice, but yes, I did answer this. Korean family society. Okay, let me just say one thing. Single parenting still seen as somewhat of a stigma that you don't see in the K-dramas. But I still kind of see that in real life, whether you're divorced. Actually, maybe because of divorce, there's a stigma there. And then I talk to clients in the US that also feel that stigma. So I feel like that's not just in Korea. It's just a little bit more pronounced maybe because divorce is kind of like the last option, even though the divorce rate is growing. Does that make sense? So that's family by choice. Traditionally speaking, you don't see single dads like that, but of course they exist in real life. And then the family values of other people's kids not being yours. I do see that because it's a family very oriented, like a neighborhood will all get together, share things, bring some panchan over, like bring some food. I see all that exists also in the US. You're going over to someone's house. Can you bring this? And I'm sitting here like this to my parents going, why do I have to bring this? They're like, because they gave, and I'm like, oh my gosh, right? And I'm my parents' daughter, but then their friends treat me like, yes, that's all that is accurate. That very neighborly sense. Yeah. You never come to someone's house empty-handed. It's like a no-no. And I feel like that's kind of the case in the US. I don't know if it is, but I'm so used to it. Even if it's like a US based friend, I will bring something because we're so used to it. Even if it's a food dish, we will bring it and make it and bring. That's the concept. Yeah. Okay, have fun with your husband. I'm almost done because I actually have a lunch date. Okay. Are schools in South Korea that relax about bullying as shown in K-dramas? No, they are getting stricter with it. The Glory really put it on the map, but it has existed for decades. They just didn't have policies in place, and they're getting more policies in place. So I want to say, to answer that on a present term, they're not that relaxed. They're trying to do something about it, and you see stories that they're trying to address that, but there's a lot of dynamics. There's a lot of people who, I don't know, in some sense have a lot of power and position that kind of fight that. That does exist a little bit more than in the US, where their policies are strict. Doesn't matter, but you still have underhanded things. Korea is much more pronounced, going, listen, do you know who I am? Do you know who my son is? That kind of thing. That exists. Yeah. So I don't want to say they're relaxed about bullying, but the shows are showing a social issue that's continuing to be addressed, that needs to be addressed. In some schools or rural areas, not so much addressed. So I'm okay with that, them showing that, because it'll create some social change. The Glory did that when that whole story came out, where it's kind of real, like based on a real life situation. People were horrified, and so because of the response on that, more things were being in place within the school system. But I think overall they need to have a broader, not just school-based policy, a broader policy, like government, country-based policy, that I think they're still trying to work on. So I hope I answered that. So I don't think they're relaxed. I think they're just trying to figure out how to handle that. It's a very hierarchical society. So that's why you see that bullying going, hey, so this happened to me. I was bullied, so I'm bullying you because I'm older. Totally see that. I'm lucky I don't experience that as a Korean American. There might have been some of that could be borderline, and then I'll be like, okay, maybe they think they're higher because they're older, but just, it's all about nipping to the bud, nipping that behavior. I'm not going to take that for any of my staff, my company. No, you ain't going to be that way, So some sense, the bullying was not addressed quick enough, and then people think they can get away with it. I think that's being addressed better. Again, I'm not in school, but it's what I'm seeing. Okay. Do you think international fandom is what driving the multi-season K-drama trend lately? Is this the new thing? Yeah, I think so. And I kind of am not sure how I feel about it. I've had producers and directors local say they don't know how to feel about it either. They do look at global response. K-dramas are global. K-pop's global. So they have to think about that. But I just think it might add a layer of stress, because they're like, are you seeing the amount of fan meets these Korean actors are? I've never seen it like that before. I'm saying everybody has a fan meet. I'm like, clearly they feel this. And when we say international, it's not just the US, which is huge. We're talking Southeast Asia is a huge market in Korea too. So Philippines, Malaysia, all that. I've never seen this many fan meets ever. That I'm like, oh my God, this person having a fan meet. You're going to this fan meet. I can't go to and then I feel, oh gosh, it must be a lot of stress on the agencies and artists and then the multi-season K-dramas. Yeah, I think it's a new thing. But I do know, and they've said this, producers and directors have said this, their market is still for South Korea. So at the end of the day, when they're doing this story, they have to have it do well in Korea before it does well globally. It doesn't matter at all if it doesn't do well locally, domestically, right? It's very important. It's like we need US movies to do well before it does well globally. We need to pay the actors and all that, right? So it's same. The multi-seasons, Squid Game for sure is based on international fandom. Hello. Yeah. And then I'm trying to think what others. There's another one, right? The Glory, they divided up in two, but it really was one. But overall, what's another one that season? I'm sure there is, but I think that is international fandom based. Yeah, but you're also noticing shorter ones, like 8 episodes, 10 episodes. I don't mind that, actually. It makes it a little tighter, and then you can move on and see another content, even if you're sad about that one. So we're seeing things not as long as 16 episodes anymore. Plus, Italians just like to feed people. Yeah, very similar, right? Oh, I know that. It's all about that. Feeding is an act of love. Okay, so let's see. Is this the last question? And then I wanted to, maybe it's the last question. Okay. It seems like it's the last question. Okay. So I wanted to answer somebody saying, how can we help as fans? Here's my call to action. We're all love to fangirl, fanboy, but I do think social media, as great as it is, because we're talking South Korean culture, they do look at they do look at the comments on social media, the actors and the writers. I know this firsthand. They told me they're looking at everything. They're like, oh, I think I need to change the plot. I'm like, why would you change the plot? This is your story. It is very much based on a collectivistic view. So how fans can help, especially globally, because that's where we are globally. Locally is very different because we have to talk about the Korean culture, is maybe not to be so much involved and engaged in the things that we know just perpetuate drama and toxicity. I don't want to give one example because I think anything can, but like we don't own the artists. When some people do say things like something to me the other day, I was like, but I don't think you know them. Like I literally said that. And this person was like, you're right. I go, yeah. So what we see on social media is probably a lot of their personality, but we don't know what they're really thinking, you know? And I do know it's a lot of pressure. As big of a name as BTS is, any of those, anybody with a huge name, even more pressure. I don't care if you can dominate the world. I do care. That doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they will look at their army. They'll look at their agency will look at army. They'll look at every comment. So it's very scrutinized. And I think sometimes fans contribute to that. So that would be my call to action. We love them. They don't know us really. They're a parasocial relationship. I think that borders a little bit of unhealthy, not stalking. I don't want to say that. Unhealthy behaviors and thinking that we could have some ownership. You have ownership of your your hobbies, all that stuff. Enjoy it. Enjoy everything. Go to fest. I'm like, I have such FOMO. I'm not there. But then, I'm celebrating my son's graduation. I will say that because I'm like, this is really important, my son's graduation. But I'm not there. But hello, we got to temper a little of that expectations, because even if you don't know it and you think you're in little old city in the US, you matter. Your comments matter, and your absorption or into a certain fan base or whatever that is, all of that does take into account to the artist's well-being. And I do think we have to think, from what I've heard about transitioning, BTS will go through a transition time. I think it's so great that there's tours there's rumors. I shouldn't confirm anything, but people will go on tour on their own solo tour. But I can only imagine the stress. I can just think, gosh, they need some transition time. I don't think there's really downtime, but I also want to preface this. I also think they love their work and they love their fans. So that's great. But at the same sense, I think fandoms can contribute a lot to the artist's mental health. And we need to understand that. So there are times I am not on every social media. I don't even know half the stuff on social media. Weverse is recent, as in I didn't realize the depth of things that are on there. But you have to be really, really important. People, I can understand, you and me might understand that we don't own the artist, but I've seen it. Like, I think someone got mad at me recently, maybe as a joke, but she was kind of mad. But I was like, did you just say that? So, it's like, what did you comment on X? Things like that. Comments you can make, you can refrain from. People you watch, you can refrain from. I don't even watch half the people. I don't even watch half the K-dramas and content. I have to remember I've even shared, I don't even go to K-pop concerts. I will temper what I watch because it's overwhelming. So I got to do that for myself so I could be there for you guys, and enjoy it. So I just think, as fandoms, can we please do that? Not only are they just like us, I'm going to share one step further, just me knowing more. They're even more vulnerable than us. We don't have that pressure to be in front of a live or on stage. They love being on stage. But again, all that comes to as a cost. Recently, I'll even say what comes at a cost for me is me being on tour. It does come at a cost, not a great cost, but a cost of me being a little more tired and having to plan more. That's what I mean. I didn't want to say that I don't like doing that, right? But there is a cost there. So fans can advocate in your own way. You can't necessarily say to them, hey, BTS, we advocate for you, but you could do things on your own. People will emulate your behavior. People will say, oh, yeah, I'll refrain from commenting and doom scrolling and going on TikTok and watching this person saying, and then getting mad that I've heard this too. I get so mad when they say we're too old. Yes, that is definitely annoying. I will get mad in a workshop. I've seen, not mad, I should say like, yeah, based on my demographic, that's like minimum age 50. I'd say K-pop is for that age. I think someone said something like K-pop's for young people. I'm like, no, it's not. And I've said that in workshops. So I'll show some like frustration, but that's what I could do. And that's one thing I could do. Does that make sense? So I don't underestimate me just sharing that in a 100-person workshop going, BTS is not just for young people or whatever it was. I think it was some other K. It might have been Stray Kids or something. And so anybody can listen to it from young to old. So we also contribute to some of that judginess. So that's my last advocacy approach, that if we could do one little thing, remember I just said this, in the field of mental health, one small change we believe leads to a bigger, huger, better, radical change. We just underestimate that small change. We think we have to like go to, Hive and change things. No, you could do one. You may not say that comment, not look at that account, not support real views or video views. So I hope that helps you. Okay, I got to wrap it up because I got to meet some for lunch. Our merch person. That's fun. I'm picking up our merch today. Yay! We have a really great merch person who's like a fabulous friend, and he is giving us all our stuff today. So I'll have to show off some new merch we have that we're bringing. Our Magic Shop Tour t-shirts are purple. Of course they are. And it's really pretty. So I'm going to go pick that up today. So I can share that with you. Super excited and having lunch with that person. You guys, thank you so much. Next time, no, you'll see me on social media, but next time I do this show with a guest will be in Korea. So until then, I'll see you. Please keep DMing me. Mandy, Joe, everybody here, CJ, Cindy, everybody, Sophie, Leslie, thank you. Melinda, Debbie, love seeing you guys. I'm really thankful for you. You guys encourage me daily. If I don't tell you that, it's so true. I read every single DM, respond to as many as I can. So thank you for being here with me.